Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I'm an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The battle lines have been drawn once again, and this time, the conflict tearing through the Logan family feels more explosive than ever before. The emotional wounds are no longer hidden beneath polite smiles or carefully chosen words, because every lingering resentment has finally risen to the surface with devastating force. At the very center of the storm stands Brooke Logan Forrester, a woman whose fierce loyalty to her family has transformed into something far more dangerous. Every setback, every perceived betrayal, and every painful disappointment has fueled an emotional fire that now threatens to consume everything around her. Those closest to Brooke are beginning to realize that reason alone may no longer be enough to calm her, because her emotions have reached a point where anger speaks louder than logic. As tensions continue to rise, it is becoming increasingly clear that Brooke is nowhere near ready to step back from this fight. And if anything, the most shocking confrontations may still be waiting just around the corner. The truth surrounding Hope Logan Spencer's dramatic departure from Forrester Creations only poured gasoline onto an already raging fire. Instead of remaining at the company that had defined so much of her career, Hope chose to embrace a bold new future with the Logan fashion line, a decision that immediately divided everyone around her. While some viewed Hope's move as an inspiring opportunity to reclaim her independence, Brooke saw something entirely different. To her, it felt as though her daughter had been pulled away from the family she believed should have remained united, and in Brooke's mind, there was only one person to blame. Consumed by outrage and convinced that Katie Logan Spencer had orchestrated the entire situation, Brooke abandoned every ounce of restraint she had left. The hurt she carried quickly transformed into uncontrollable fury, setting the stage for one of the most unforgettable confrontations the Logan sisters had ever experienced. Without hesitation, Brooke stormed directly toward Katie, her emotions boiling over with every step she took. The confrontation began with accusations, but it rapidly spiraled into something much darker as Brooke unleashed every ounce of frustration she had been suppressing. She angrily accused Katie of stealing Hope away, insisting that her own sister had deliberately torn their family apart in pursuit of her own ambitions. Katie stood stunned by the accusations, struggling to recognize the woman standing before her. The sister she had loved for years seemed almost unrecognizable beneath the weight of overwhelming rage, heartbreak, and desperation. Every attempt to inject calm into the conversation was swallowed by Brooke's relentless anger, making it painfully obvious that this encounter was heading toward disaster. Then came the moment that proved just how completely Brooke had lost control. In a shocking explosion of emotion, she lashed out with such force that a television screen was shattered, leaving the room frozen in stunned silence. Broken glass became a powerful symbol of the damage that had spread throughout the Logan family, reflecting fractured relationships that now seemed impossible to repair. The confrontation escalated so dramatically that Brooke and Katie nearly crossed the line from verbal warfare into physical violence. The tension crackled through the air as both women stood locked in a furious standoff, each refusing to back down, while years of unresolved emotions threatened to erupt all at once. Had anyone arrived just a few moments later, the Logan sisters might have become involved in a full-blown family brawl unlike anything either of them could have imagined. Fortunately, fate intervened before the situation could become even more catastrophic. Hope arrived just in time, stepping into a room overflowing with rage, heartbreak, and shattered trust. Her sudden appearance interrupted the escalating confrontation before fists could fly. But even her presence could not erase the emotional scars that had already been carved into the family. The silence that followed felt heavy with disappointment, as everyone realized just how close Brooke and Katie had come to crossing a line that could never truly be undone. Hope could only watch as the consequences of her career decision continued to ripple outward, affecting not only businesses and family loyalties, but also the very relationships that had once seemed unbreakable. It was a sobering reminder that the deepest wounds are often inflicted not by strangers, but by the people who know us best. Katie refused to surrender to the bitterness consuming her sister. Even after enduring Brooke's explosive accusations and witnessing her destructive outburst firsthand, Katie still reached out in hopes of rebuilding the bridge between them. She attempted to remind Brooke that they were sisters before they were rivals, and that family should always matter more than business disagreements. Katie spoke with patience, hoping that compassion might succeed where confrontation had failed. But Brooke's anger had become too deeply rooted. Every olive branch Katie extended was pushed aside, every attempt at reconciliation rejected before it could take hold. Brooke simply refused to see the situation through anyone else's eyes, leaving Katie heartbroken as she watched the emotional distance between them continue to widen. From Katie's perspective, neither she nor the Spencer family had committed any wrongdoing. Despite the endless complaints coming from the Forrester side, Katie believed she had done nothing that required apology or regret. She had every legal and moral right to build a fashion house using her own family name, and no amount of criticism could change that reality. The Logan name belonged to her just as much as it belonged to Brooke or Hope, making the accusations feel deeply unfair. Rather than stealing anything, Katie believed she was simply creating new opportunities where others had chosen to close doors. To her, the outrage coming from the Forresters seemed less like justice and more like wounded pride disguised as moral superiority. That conviction only grew stronger after Eric Forrester made a life-changing decision of his own. Following the emotional aftermath of his forced retirement celebration, Eric personally approached Katie with an extraordinary offer that would dramatically reshape the future of her company. He signed a contract allowing Katie access to his newest designs, placing his faith in her vision despite everything happening around them. Katie accepted the opportunity with gratitude, fully believing she was entitled to use the legendary designer's work because it had been freely and willingly given. No deception had taken place, no theft had occurred, and no one had forced Eric into making his choice. In Katie's eyes, she was simply honoring an agreement while helping preserve creative talent that deserved to be seen rather than forgotten. With her fashion house steadily gaining momentum, Katie continued opening doors for those who had been cast aside elsewhere. She offered a fresh start to Deke Sharp, a former Forrester employee who had lost his place within the company, believing that talent should never be wasted because of corporate politics. At the same time, she welcomed Hope into an environment where Hope could rebuild her confidence after feeling mistreated and undervalued. Katie wasn't interested in revenge for its own sake. She wanted to prove that second chances could produce extraordinary results when people were given the support they deserved. Her growing fashion empire became more than just another business venture. It evolved into a symbol of redemption for individuals who had been pushed aside by the very people who once depended on them. As each new opportunity unfolded, Katie became even more convinced that she was building something meaningful rather than tearing something apart. As Katie's new venture continued to gather momentum, her ambitions naturally expanded beyond clothing alone. Building a successful fashion house meant thinking ahead, exploring new creative avenues, and offering customers a complete lifestyle brand rather than a single collection. That vision led her toward launching a jewelry line, a decision that felt like a logical and exciting next step for a company determined to establish its own identity. To Katie, diversification wasn't an act of aggression against Forrester Creations. It was simply smart business. Every successful fashion empire eventually broadened its reach, and there was no reason the Logan brand should be denied the same opportunity simply because the Forresters viewed it as competition. Yet while Katie saw growth and possibility, The Forrester family seemed to interpret every achievement as a personal attack, reacting with frustration and outrage that only deepened the divide between both sides. From an outside perspective, however, the situation appeared far less complicated than the Forresters wanted everyone to believe. Katie had built her company using opportunities that had come to her legally and honestly, never hiding her intentions or deceiving anyone along the way. She had embraced designers who needed a second chance, welcomed hope after she felt pushed aside, and continued investing in the future of a business that was steadily earning its place in the fashion world. Rather than acting out of spite, Katie genuinely believed she was creating opportunities where others had seen only dead ends. That made the Forresters' relentless criticism seem increasingly unreasonable. To many observers, their constant complaints no longer resembled righteous indignation, but instead looked like the bitter reactions of people unwilling to accept that someone else might succeed outside their own powerful empire. At the heart of Katie's mission was something far more personal than business expansion. She wanted Hope Logan to have the opportunity she believed had been unfairly taken away from her. A chance to rebuild both her confidence and her career without constantly living beneath the shadow of old conflicts. Katie saw Hope not as a weapon in a family feud, but as a gifted woman who deserved to flourish in an environment where her creativity would finally be appreciated. Every new project, every collection, and every ambitious plan represented another step toward proving that Hope's future did not have to be defined by rejection. That unwavering support only strengthened the bond between them, even as it intensified Brooke's growing resentment. Ironically, the harder Katie worked to create something positive, the more Brooke seemed convinced that every success was another deliberate attack against her family. If the conflict remained hidden behind closed doors, Brooke might still have managed to preserve her public image. So far, her explosive confrontations had largely taken place away from curious eyes, allowing the outside world to remain unaware of just how deeply her emotions had begun to overwhelm her. Behind private walls, however, a very different story was unfolding. Friends and family had already witnessed Brooke's increasingly volatile behavior, watching her lash out with an intensity that seemed completely unlike the composed woman they had known for years. Every emotional eruption suggested that the pressure surrounding Hope's decision was pushing Brooke closer to a dangerous breaking point. The question was no longer whether another outburst would happen, but whether the next one would finally occur where everyone could see it. Imagine the shockwaves that would ripple through the fashion industry if one of Brooke's emotional meltdowns were suddenly captured on camera. A single recording could instantly transform private family drama into public spectacle, exposing every raw emotion she had desperately tried to contain. The image of the once confident Forrester queen losing complete control would spread with astonishing speed, inviting endless speculation and harsh public judgment. The woman who had long projected elegance, confidence, and authority could suddenly find herself remembered instead for a moment of uncontrollable rage. In today's world, where a single video can reshape reputations overnight, such footage could become impossible to escape. What had once been whispered about behind closed doors would suddenly become a scandal witnessed by countless eyes. As the hostility between the sisters continued to intensify, an even more dangerous possibility began to emerge. If Katie became convinced that Brooke's relentless attacks would never stop, she might decide that the only way to protect herself was to expose Brooke's behavior once and for all. Rather than waiting for another unpredictable confrontation, Katie could carefully arrange circumstances that encouraged Brooke's temper to erupt while ensuring undeniable proof existed for everyone to see. It would be a calculated trap, not one built on lies, but on allowing Brooke's own actions to speak for themselves. Every angry word, every reckless gesture, and every emotional explosion could be preserved as undeniable evidence. In a conflict where trust had completely vanished, documentation might become Katie's strongest weapon. Such evidence could serve countless purposes, each one carrying enormous consequences. Katie might choose to hold on to the footage as protection against future attacks, using it as leverage should Brooke attempt to damage the Logan brand again. On the other hand, she could decide that the world deserved to witness the truth, turning the recording into a devastating act of public sabotage. If the footage were leaked, viewers would see Brooke unraveling in spectacular fashion, exposing a side of herself that few had ever imagined existed. The resulting scandal wouldn't stop with Brooke alone. Since she remained one of the most recognizable faces associated with Forrester Creations, her very public collapse could cast a dark shadow over the company's reputation, raising uncomfortable questions about the instability surrounding one of fashion's most influential families. A scandal of that magnitude would send shockwaves far beyond a single-family dispute. Customers, investors, and industry insiders would inevitably begin questioning the culture behind Forrester Creations, wondering whether the chaos unfolding inside the family had finally become impossible to hide. Every headline would fuel fresh controversy. Every social media post would invite another wave of public debate, and every new interview could deepen the damage. The rivalry between the Forresters and the Logans would no longer be confined to private boardrooms or family living rooms. It would become front-page entertainment for the entire world to dissect. The personal would become professional, and the emotional consequences would ripple through every corner of the fashion empire both families had fought so hard to build. One thing has become impossible to ignore. This feud is far from over. The wounds separating Katie and Brooke continue to grow deeper with every confrontation, and neither woman appears willing to surrender the principles she believes are worth defending. Brooke's emotions remain dangerously close to boiling over once again, while Katie seems increasingly determined to stand her ground, no matter how fierce the opposition becomes. Every encounter carries the potential to ignite another explosive chapter, leaving family relationships, business empires, and lifelong loyalties hanging in the balance. As the drama continues to unfold, stunning twists may still lie ahead. And if these two sisters continue traveling this destructive path, the next confrontation could prove even more shocking than anything they have faced so far.